Hello everyone, my name is Elite Trainer Kenway and I've been thinking, one of the coolest things about Pokemon is that every 3 years or so we get a new generation, which means new Pokemon. But one of the weirdest things about Pokemon is that we never know how many new Pokemon we're going to get with a new generation. So one of the biggest questions that always surrounds the announcement of a new generation is how many Pokemon are we going to get this time? That got me thinking, what if we were able to rewrite history and re-release the first 9 generations of Pokemon, but this time we made sure that each generation got the exact same number of Pokemon released. So that's what we're going to do. This is a 9-part series dedicated to rearranging the entire National Dex to make sure each generation has exactly 112 new Pokemon. In this episode, we're going to cover our brand new Generation 1 Kanto region, but there are a few rules we have to establish first. We want to keep evolutionary lines together as much as possible. Second, we need to be careful to stay within the confines of each generation's game mechanics. And third, because Legends Arceus was its own unique game with unique mechanics, we're going to lock all of its brand new Pokemon in this game. However, the pre-evolutions for these new Pokemon are going to be released in earlier generations. So our starters are still going to be the Bulbasaur line, Charmander line, Squirtle line. Then we have our Caterpie, Metapod, and Butterfree. Then we have Weedle, Kakuna, and Beedrill. Then we have Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot. And here's going to be our first big shakeup. I feel like Spearow and Fearow don't get enough love because they're too similar to Pidgey and Pidgeot in Generation 1. So we're going to hold them off for a different generation and instead release Hoot Hoot and Noctowl in Generation 1. Followed by Ekans and Arbok, Pichu, Pikachu and Raichu, Sandshrew and Sandslash, Cleffa, Clefairy and Clefable, Igglybuff, Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff, Cantonian, Vulpix and Ninetales, Hoppip, Skiploom and Jumpluff. Those are now released in Generation 1. Followed by Paris and Parasect, Diglett and Dugtrio, Psyduck and Golduck, Growlithe and Arcanine, Abracadabra and Alakazam, Machop, Machoke and Machamp, Bellsprout, Weepinbell and Victreebel, Geodude, Graveler and Golem, and because the Psychic type is underrepresented in Generation 1, we're also going to reveal Spoik and Grumpig in Gen 1. Followed by Goldeen and Seaking, which I thought could have a fun rivalry with Finneon and Lumineon. Next, because Cinnabar Island sits right next to a volcano, I thought it would be a good home for Numel and Camerupt. Then, of course, we have Shellder and Cloyster, Drowsy and Hypno, Shuppet and Banette because ghosts are also underrepresented in Generation 1 Kanto, Ghastly, Haunter and Gengar, Krabby and Kingler, Croagunk and Toxicroak, Bonsly and Sudowoodo, Cubone and Marowak, Stantler, Kangaskhan, Voltorb and Electrode, Mime Jr. and Mr. Mime, Staryu and Starmie, Smoochum and Jinx, Lapras, Ditto, Ammonite and Amistar, Kabuto and Kabutops, Aerodactyl, Munchlax and Snorlax, and because dragon types are also underrepresented in Kanto, Trapinch, Vibrava, and Flygon, as well as Dratini, Dragonair, and Dragonite. And this might be a controversial choice, but my 4 Generation 1 legendary Pokemon are going to be Entei, Raikou, Suicune, and Mewtwo. We're going to talk about the Cantonian birds next week when we discuss Johto, but for now, I want the 3 legendary dogs to be released in the Kanto region. And as far as Mew is concerned, yes, I want all references to Mew to stay in Generation 1. However, I believe that Mew's physical debut in the games should be in the Generation 2 post-game. Since Generation 2 was a direct sequel to Generation 1 and Mewtwo was the final boss in Generation 1, Mew should be the final boss of Generation 2 that you can only meet after telling Professor Oak that you've beaten Red on Mount Silver. That should have been the ending to Generation 2. And since we're shaking up Kanto's Pokedex, we may as well go ahead and restructure each gym battle and the Elite Four, so let's go ahead and do that now. For Brock's gym, we have, of course, Geodude and Sudowoodo. For Misty, we have Finneon and Starmie. For Lieutenant Surge, we have Voltorb, Pikachu, and Raichu. That didn't change. For Erica, I have Parasect, Skiploom, and then Victreebel. For Koga, I have Croagunk, Arbok, Toxicroak, and another Toxicroak. For Sabrina, I have Kadabra, Mr. Mime, Grumpig, and Gengar. For Blaine, I have Growlithe, Ninetales, Camerupt, and Arcanine. I feel like Blaine owning a Camerupt would be a good precursor to what happens to Cinnabar Island in Generation 2. Then we have Giovanni's Gym Fight, which features Vibrava, Dugtrio, Golem, and another Golem. Starting off the Elite Four, Lorelei should have Omastar, Kabutops, Cloyster, Jinx, and Lapras. Bruno should have Golem, Dugtrio, Toxicroak, Golem, and Machamp. Agatha should have Grumpig, Hypno, Bayonet, Arbok, and Gengar. And Lance should have Dragonair, Aerodactyl, Flygon, Charizard, and Dragonite. So here's our brand new complete Generation 1 Kanto Pokedex featuring 112 Pokemon. So that's pretty much it. That's our entire reimagining of Generation 1 Kanto. I actually had a ton of fun making this list. I think it's a really cool concept. So unless something comes up, I plan on dedicating the next 8 weeks to Generations 2 through 9. That's it for me, you guys. Come back next week so we can rewrite Johto's Pokedex. Peace.